What is your greatest fear? Spiders, heights, the dark?
For most of modern history, one fear towered above all others. A terror so profound, it infected the entire Western world. It wasn't the fear of death. It was the fear of death not being final. The fear of waking up, in a small, dark, six-sided box, 6 feet under the earth. This was taphophobia, the overwhelming fear of being buried alive. And in the 18th and 19th centuries, this wasn't an irrational fantasy. It was a horrifyingly common reality. You have to understand, medical science was primitive. Doctors had few tools to confirm death. A weak pulse, a shallow breath, were easily missed. Comas, fainting spells, or certain diseases like cholera could make a living person appear completely dead. They would be cold, stiff, and pale. The doctor would declare them deceased. The family would grieve. And the funeral would happen, terrifyingly quickly. In the oppressive heat of summer, before modern embalming, a body had to be buried within a day or two, before it began to decompose. There was no time to be certain. And so, people were buried. Alive. The stories were everywhere. They weren't just ghost stories, they were news reports. Like the famous case of a young woman named Virginia McDonald in 1851. She was buried. Later, her mother insisted on exhuming the coffin. They opened the lid, and found a scene of pure terror. Virginia's hands were bitten, and the lining of the coffin was shredded. She had woken up. Or the case of Mary Hart, whose coffin was opened to find her sitting up, her clothes torn, her fingers bloody. This panic gripped society. People became obsessed. People started adding clauses to their wills, not begging for a quick burial, but begging against it. They would demand to be left to rot for days, just to be sure. Some demanded that their veins be cut open, or that a hot poker be applied to their feet, or even that they be decapitated before burial. They preferred mutilation over the chance of waking up in a box. This terror created one of the strangest industries of the Victorian age, the safety coffin. Inventors scrambled to solve the problem. Patents were filed for hundreds of designs. There were coffins with air pipes reaching to the surface, coffins with ladders inside, coffins with windows, so a watchman could look in. But the most famous designs were all about communication. They designed coffins with a cord, which was placed in the hand of the corpse. This cord ran up through the soil and was attached to a bell on the surface. If the person woke up, all they had to do was pull the cord. This is the origin of the phrases, "saved by the bell," and "dead ringer." They weren't jokes, they were literal descriptions of this technology. Night watchmen were hired to sit in cemeteries, listening for the faint ring 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 of the undead. But did it work? Did any of these bells ever save anyone? There are no confirmed cases. The system was flawed. A decaying, settling body could easily snag the rope by accident, leading to false alarms. And it all relied on one terrible assumption, that you would wake up, calm. Now, let's talk about the man who was buried alive, and knew it was happening. His name was Angelo Hays. This isn't the 1800s. This is 1937, Bordeaux, France. Angelo was 19 years old. He loved motorcycles. One day, he was riding, and he crashed, hard. He was thrown from his bike, his head striking a brick wall. When the doctors found him, he was unresponsive. No pulse. No breath. His body was cold. They tried everything, but he was pronounced dead. His family was devastated. Because of the severity of the head trauma, his funeral was arranged quickly. 3 days later, Angelo Hays was buried. But Angelo wasn't dead. He was in a deep, profound coma, induced by the head injury. His body's functions had slowed to a level that was completely undetectable by 1930s medicine. He was buried, alive. And now, the story should end. He should have suffocated. He should have been just another statistic. But 2 days after his funeral, a local insurance company became suspicious. Angelo's father had recently taken out a large life insurance policy on his son, for 200,000 francs. The company suspected fraud. They suspected the father had murdered his son. They demanded an investigation. They demanded an exhumation. 2 days after he was buried, Angelo's coffin was brought back to the surface and opened by police and doctors. They were expecting a dead body. Instead, they found Angelo Hays. His body was worn. He was not moving, he was still in the deep coma, but he was unmistakably alive. How did he survive? It was a miracle of circumstance. The deep coma had drastically reduced his need for oxygen. And the coffin, likely poorly constructed or buried in porous soil, had just enough air leaks to keep him breathing. He had been underground for 2 full days. Angelo was rushed to the hospital. He remained in a coma. Doctors performed several operations on his skull to relieve the pressure. And then, months later, he woke up. He eventually made a full recovery. Angelo Hays didn't just survive. He became a celebrity in France. He even invented a safety coffin. Unlike the Victorian bells, his was modern. It had a radio transmitter, an alarm, and even a toilet. He would demonstrate it at fairs, lying inside, proving it worked. He knew, better than anyone, what it felt like. He was the man who went to his own funeral, was buried by his family, and lived to tell the tale. His story leaves us with one lingering, terrifying question. How many other bells never got the chance to ring?